like, I've never been so popular with my university students as in the few weeks after I came back from the Swiftposium, and I was like, oh, sorry I wasn't here last week. I was speaking at a Taylor Swift conference. I just got like mobbed. It was like my own little like celebrity moment.
It was an academic conference. She wasn't there.
No, she wasn't there. She was in Melbourne at the time. We were kind of hoping she would drop in. But
that would have been amazing.
Hi, Per. So can you tell us who you are and what you teach here at Curtin?
My name is Per Henningsgaard, and I teach in the professional writing and publishing major here at Curtin University.
Nice.
And how about you? What are you teaching in tomorrow?
So I'm in education, and I teach mostly the literacy and English units, because I'm on the other side of loving books. You're involved in the writing, and I'm involved in the reading of them. It's kind of my favourite thing to do.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. And how long have you been connected to Curtin University at this stage?
So it's just under 3 years. Okay. I started here as a PhD student a few years ago, and then kind of fell into sessional teaching before I started lecturing to give me something to do while I was waiting for ethics approvals. But before that, I was teaching for like 20 years in schools. Yeah.
And how do you like that transition from school teaching to university lecturing?
It's interesting. I didn't actually think I wanted to be an academic. I thought I would do my PhD and then go back to schools, because I love teaching. Like, I really love working with teenagers.
Yeah.
And so being in schools just feels like my happy place. And I thought that teaching at university would be something I do till I get to go back to that.
Yeah.
But I discovered that I really love teaching here as well. Like, partly just because I love teaching, I love getting to work with students, and whether they are teenagers or in their 20s or 30s, like, the teaching stuff is still really awesome. But because I love teaching as a profession, getting to help prepare students who are going into that as a career just feels really rewarding. I was not expecting how much I would become really passionate about it, and it's really become not the best job I've ever had. It's like, working with teenagers still has a really special place in my heart, but I really love what I'm getting to do here.
Yeah. I mean, that's so funny you say that, though, about not kind of expecting this to be the job that you would go into, or not necessarily being like the dream job.
Yeah.
Because that was true for me as well. I came into academia from a career in publishing, and I just kind of fell into a PhD and then thought, I will be going back into publishing at the end of this, because it was a publishing research project. And then I had that opportunity to teach and really fell in love with that at that point. But unlike you, I didn't come into it with like a love of teaching and a knowing that this was what I wanted to do. Both my parents are school teachers, and so I grew up being like, I am never going to be a teacher.
This is often the case. People who've grown up with teachers see all of the really bad stuff about it, all of the hard work, and because it does take a lot of commitment. And I know so many teachers who are like, I've never wanted to be a teacher because my parents were, and then they find themselves doing that anyway because it just,
Yeah, 3 years, that's awesome. I've been here for, I think, 8 years now, and it's been a wild and fun ride. And you sort of never, this was the last place I would have expected to land, as a young person growing up. Certainly, I grew up in the US, so the idea of being on the other side of the world, and the idea of being a lecturer, never would have occurred to me when I was growing up.
I remember when I was doing my undergrad degree a long time ago, like, lecturers always seemed like very serious people, and I couldn't see myself in that kind of role because I don't see myself as a very serious person. Like, I'm really enthusiastic about all of the stuff that I love, and really kind of like passionate about that. And so maybe it's a discredit to my lecturers from back in the 90s. Maybe they just looked serious, but I could never have seen myself in this kind of role.
I mean, I definitely had a few of those moments early in my time when I was like first getting, casual tutoring work as a PhD student, where I was like, I don't know who I am as a tutor or as a lecturer. I don't know what my identity is. I don't know how I approach this. And I remember consciously trying to model myself on some lecturers that I'd had that I thought were really great lecturers. But they were quite serious, and several of them were quite soft-spoken. And I remember trying that and being like, this doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
This isn't who I am. This doesn't align with my personality. And so trying to sort of find my way into that identity and recognizing, all right, a lecturer can behave in this way or that way, can dress like this or like that, and do all these different things. That was a bit of a revelation for me, which seems so silly in retrospect, right? I should have, of course, recognized they're people, they have personalities, they have families, they have, all these things going on. But so often as a uni student, or even as a school student, you're not thinking about that. So you're only seeing them up in front of the classroom or in front of the lecture theater.
That's something that I talk about with my students a lot, particularly the ones that have come straight from high school, because they know that they want to be teachers, but also they're much closer in age to the people they're going to be teaching than the people who were teaching them. And so getting them to think about, well, what does being a teacher look like for me? That it doesn't have to be the same as the maths teacher who you really loved or the science teacher that you really hated, that like finding your own identity in that as a teacher is really important.
Yeah, and that identity is going to change over time, especially because like when I first got my first job as a lecturer, like a full-time position, I was not that much older than my students, right? I was significantly older, but I didn't necessarily look significantly older, and so I dressed significantly older, and I behaved in certain ways that I was like, I need to distinguish myself in a certain way, and that's changed over time as I go, okay, well now I'm older now. Everyone recognizes me as being very distinct from the student body, but of course we also have students who are coming from all kinds of different backgrounds and not necessarily just those traditionally aged students. And for me, that's been one of the greatest delights about coming to this job at Curtin University. I taught at a couple universities before, had some different experiences, but when I came here, the real diversity of different students that I got to interact with, that I find in my classroom here, has been just really exciting. I really love working with mature age students, people who have had a whole career or a family, or they're just starting a family, and they're also trying to go on this university journey. That's a really exciting
I think the same. We have the same in education. So the undergrad students are usually closer in age to, like they've just come from high school. But in our postgrad courses, which I teach in as well, they're people who've done degrees, they've had other careers, and they've maybe come to teaching later in life. And it's really like, as someone who loves teaching and who has always known that's what I wanted to do, to get to work with people who have come to that realization later, who have a really strong understanding of who they are in the world and the impact that they can have on students is really awesome. I was also, I've done a couple of postgrad degrees before I got to my PhD, and some of those were via distance, so I understand what it's like as a working single mother doing postgrad study and having to prioritise that. I know the struggles that they're facing and how hard that can be to kind of prioritise all of those parts of your life. Yeah, it's like, I love the diversity of students that we get to work with.
Yeah, and those distance students, the distance learners, people who are learning online, you say that you had that experience, but I never had that experience. And so for me, that's been a real learning curve. And I'd like to think I'm pretty good at it now, but it took a lot of effort to get there, to go, oh, okay, this is a really different model of teaching and a model of learning. And I need to figure out how to meet these students where they are. They're often coming from such different circumstances. They're studying at night when the baby's asleep, or they're, all kinds of different challenges that you need to be adjusting to. That's been kind of a fun challenge. Yeah.
Can I ask, what did you do in publishing before you came into, because I'm a reader, I love, and that's purely my only relationship with publishing. I support the authors that I love.
Well, I mean, first of all, everyone in publishing loves readers like yourself.
I'm contributing to the ecosystem.
That's right. Who want to buy books. I started out in publishing in New York. So obviously I'm American. I grew up in a small town in the middle of the country, but went off to uni in New York. Kind of had that need to get out of this small town, need to break these chains, need to do something different. And so I went to New York to go to uni and studied English literature through throughout uni, and then was fortunate to get a job in publishing, working in the editorial department of a publishing house after I graduated. So that was my very first job in publishing, and I loved it. It was not the sort of like sexy, glamorous, fun side of publishing that everyone thinks about. It's not the books that you are spending your hard-earned money on. So I was working on educational publishing, so textbooks specifically for university students. And the list of books that I spent the most time working on was actually their world history list. So all kinds of different history books, which was a really cool education for me at the same time as I was being employed, where I went, I studied a little bit of history, but now I get to spend a lot of time learning about the history of Latin America or the history of Asia or all these different parts of the world that I didn't spend as much time with. So that was like a terrific education for me, both in the sense of learning the history, but also learning about the industry in New York. But since then, I've gone on and I've run a couple different publishing houses, so small independent publishing houses, 2 of them in the United States, and then now I'm here in Australia.
So you have one at Curtin now, right? And I follow is it Elephant Page?
Yeah, Elephant Page Publishing.
On Instagram, and I love getting to see the students, like getting to build their skills in like how they select texts and doing all of that kind of editorial stuff. It's so cool.
Yeah. Elephant Page Publishing was something that we founded in 2024. So it's still really new and we're still building it up. But we published, I brought books because of course
here's some you prepared earlier.
Right. So this was a children's picture book that we published as our first book. It's called Henry the Wombat Learns to Budget. And this was a really great way for the publishing house and the students to get straight into the process of learning all the skills of publishing without taking on a project that was going to be massive and take a whole year. But we're not just publishing children's picture books, we're publishing all kinds of books, and so we have other books in the works right now, including a middle grade novel for kids that are kind of like 8 to 13. And then we also have an adult mystery or a crime novel. So really exciting stuff. And these are definitely the kinds of books that we see as being of interest, hopefully of interest to people like you, to general readers. And that's because with Elephant Page Publishing, what we're doing is we're allowing the students to make as many of the decisions as possible and do as much of the work as possible. And people like myself, staff members, are there just as support and guidance, right? And so we want the students to pick the manuscripts that they are excited about, right? To go through the submissions that we receive, and we receive submissions from all over the country, and to find the ones that they connect with. And so one given cohort of students might find a crime novel that they love, another one might find a fantasy novel that they love, another one, all kinds of possibilities. And that's
so to be really
exciting.
Directed by what the students do rather than, structures being imposed on them.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, in a more commercially minded publishing house, you maybe don't have that freedom to go, oh, whatever you want. But here we need to break even. It is there's money at stake, right? It's a financial investment that we're making when we print books. But we don't need to be bringing back oodles of money or ending up with bestsellers, right?
Just self-sustaining.
Exactly. So we can afford to go, all right, well, if this group of students is really in love with this poetry collection, even though we think, poetry is really hard to sell, if we really love it and we believe in it and we think it deserves an audience, then we can do that. And
giving really the students the opportunity to take some risks in that too. It's one of the things that we do in our education units, like trying new things in front of a classroom with high school students or primary school students can be scary, but getting to do that, like play with those practical, strategies around teaching in a really safe, supported space. So they're kind of linking the theory that they're learning to what that's actually going to look like in their job for them. So in publishing for you, in teaching for me, but really supported by the staff.
And that's so important to have that support there when they're doing these things that feel so risky to them, feel so high stakes to them. It's so different whether they're getting up in front of a class of real school students or whether they are, publishing a real book that goes out into the world, those feel like real stakes because they are real stakes. And it's so different to like write an essay, turn it into your lecturer, they mark it, no one else sees it, right? And so when they take on these like big risky projects, they need that support. And that's really, I love that. I love that moment. I love seeing them like work through that and come out more confident on the other side.
Yeah. So the students that are working in the publishing house are doing this as a unit. And so what are they doing as part of that? What are they working on across the university?
Yeah, so the students who are involved with Elephant Page Publishing, most of them are professional writing and publishing, majoring in professional writing and publishing, or majoring in creative writing. And so they would have done some preparatory units where they've studied editing, they've studied publishing, they've done these kind of things in theory, and then this is their hands-on application. But we are aware that to run a publishing house requires skills that go beyond what writing students would typically have. Now we're really excited to use the other skills that those students bring in. So some of our students just so happen to be like an amazing photographer, or they're, doing a double degree in, accounting or something like, and you go, well, this is great. We can use those skills. But we also are interested in going outside and connecting with other parts of the university and bringing in the skill sets that they have there. So, for example, we've connected with the John Curtin Law Clinic, which is in the law school, and they're responsible for helping us vet our contracts that we sign with authors to make sure that it's equitable for authors, but also preserves the rights that the publishing house needs to function. And we can work with illustration students if we need illustration work, or we can work with accounting students if we need financial support. So there's lots of different connections there, and we're in the beginning stages of building those out, but I see it as a really great opportunity to connect across campus. Curtin University is so big, as you know, and even as staff here, we can become really quite siloed because there's just so much to do and so much to see in our little part of the university. And so to have this kind of excuse to go to other parts of the university and say, hey, I know you have this skill and I need this skill. And what can we do that gets your students involved so they can benefit from this as well? I think that's really exciting.
So when you were showing us the book earlier, I was thinking, how could I use that in my primary literacy units? So if you want some connections to using some of the text in classrooms, hit me up.
Absolutely, and we had one of the students who was involved in the kind of early stages of that book was a student who was also studying education, and brought really great input into the classroom. In terms of, okay, well, actually, if we look at the map of the curriculum in Western Australia, this is when financial literacy is taught, and this is so we need to be gauging it at this level, all those kinds of things that I go, I didn't know that. I wouldn't have even thought to think about that. So it's really exciting to have that in the classroom already, but you're absolutely right. We want to bring it and get more students involved and get the benefit of their expertise as well. So tell me about what it is that your students are doing when they're going out on their kind of their version of real life things, which is of course going into school.
So
when does that start for your students?
Well, so it kind of depends on their degree. So we have early childhood, primary and secondary courses. So we teach our students to be teachers from birth. Early childhood students work with children from 0 to 8 years old, right up to 18-year-olds. So there's a huge spectrum, and the courses are structured a little bit differently, but mostly we try and get students to go on what we call a professional experience as soon as possible. And so they do 4 units across the course of their degree if they're doing an undergrad degree, 3 if they're doing a graduate diploma for the postgrad students. But they're really supported. So that professional experience is part of a unit. They have a tutor who works with them to develop whatever skills they're going to need for that placement. So the first placement is always mostly observation, getting a feel for being in the classroom as a teacher, but without the responsibility of standing in front of 30 little humans and having to teach the class by themselves. So they'll do some observation for the first week, and then they will work on designing a group activity to work with a smaller group of students, while their mentor teacher, who is a professional teacher based in a school, will be taking the rest of the class. So they're really supported all the way through.
And they're doing that like from
semester one for some of the courses. So they come in, they will do 5 or 6 weeks in the semester, and then they'll go out on their first placement, which is just a couple of weeks. And because it doesn't matter how much theory you know about education, if you can't find a space for yourself in the classroom, then it's really hard to continue on with your degree. Like, you really need to be able to figure out who you are as a teacher. And I know people who have done entire education degrees and gone, I really love education, but I don't want to be a teacher anymore. That actually working with students is not something that I want to do. And so our students need to know that early. Do I actually want to be a teacher, or do I want to work in education in other ways? Because there are a lot of other ways that they could do that. So we've got Bachelor of Education Studies, which is an education degree but without the teaching placement. For people who might want to get into policy, or who might want to work in education in things like museums and art galleries and stuff, and do some of their educational programs, but not necessarily 5 days a week face-to-face in schools for 40 weeks out of the year. It's a profession, and you can learn a lot about how to be a good teacher and what you need to know about educational theory. It really does take a specific kind of person who is comfortable in that space and can find a way to manage all of the kind of competing obligations and building those relationships with students. It can be really exhausting, and if that is not for you, you don't want to waste your time doing a whole degree. Early. Absolutely, yes.
Getting those like hands-on experiences early in the degree so valuable for so many different reasons. So I know that you have a particular investment in books, right? So how does that kind of play into the work that you're doing? Like, are you a literacy specialist?
I pretty exclusively teach the literacy and English units. So in the primary degree, that means teaching anything from junior primary units, which are focused on teaching our students how to teach their students the skills of reading, the actual mechanics of learning the alphabet and learning to write and learning the phonics, all of those really complex skills that it still blows my mind to think that people go from nothing to all of a sudden just being able to read. And that's the responsibility of a teacher. So that's kind of what it looks like in the junior primary units. In the upper primary and secondary, it's still focused on those skills, but also focused on the kind of engagement with literature as a form of communication, and texts more generally. So it's not just books, although I love reading books. It's about thinking about how do we use language in the world, because it's so empowering. The literacy skills provide access to so many opportunities, and we know that being a literate person is really important, but it's not just about the ability to read and write. It's about those critical literacy skills, about being able to see yourself in the world, to develop a sense of empathy, to see other people's points of view in the world. And so I do that through helping students think about who they are as a person first, what their story is, because I'm kind of a bit obsessed with stories, and not just between the pages of books, but like every person has a different story as to how they got somewhere. There's this concept of roots and roots, right? That who you are as a person is both encapsulated by where you came from and how you got to where you are, like the two different kinds of roots. And so as an English teacher, I want my students firstly to understand who they are, why their story is important and why it matters, so that they can understand that about their students, and then use texts, whether they're books or songs or films or whatever they're engaging with, to help them make some kind of understanding of their place in the world. And hopefully they will go on to become people who love to read, who love to explore stories in the world around them. But it's more important that they figure out what it means to them to be the kind of person they want to be. It sounds it got very big picture, esoteric there for a little bit.
No, but I love that. I mean, that makes sense to me, and it and that the valuing of students' individual story and individual experience, that really resonates with me. And I think back to my own sort of, school experience around reading, and I think, well, okay, I was that student who loved to read. I read a ton outside of school. I read voraciously all kinds of different things. And the education that I had was very well suited to that. Yeah. But as I got older, I recognized that, looking back, oh boy, that was probably not well suited to every person in that classroom. Yeah, right?
And this is one of the things that I really want my students to understand, particularly in the secondary English, because people who choose to study secondary English are usually my kind of people, right? They're usually people who love to read. They've had really good English teachers, but sometimes they're not. Like sometimes they're people who have had to have picked a second major or a minor to go with their major, and they go, well, I'm good at English, so I will do that. And so I want them to think about, if you're teaching a student who is not like you, who doesn't love to read the same kinds of things you do, it's not the student's responsibility to make the class work. You're the teacher. Right. How do you make that work? And so this is where that kind of getting a sense of valuing everyone's story is really important. And as someone who reads for pleasure, and my research is in reading for pleasure, I do believe everyone can become a reader, but what that means is something very different for every person. Like we see with the kind of the increase in people listening to podcasts and stuff, like that's reading, that's engaging with stories, like finding a way for our students to think about their role as readers, their responsibility to help support all of their students, I think is really cool. I get to come to work and talk about books with a bunch of really cool kids. It's, sometimes I kind of go, I'm getting paid for this. This is,
you get to talk about it with the ones who already bring that passion usually and that investment in that subject matter. And that's true for me as well, right? So I teach students who've chosen to study writing, and so you're working with a certain kind of student, but to build empathy in those students, which is, I think, is what you're talking about, for them to understand that, okay, not everyone has that same relationship to books or to reading or to writing. And so how do we connect with those other people, whether that's connecting with students who don't have that relationship, or when I'm teaching publishing, I'm saying, okay, well, you're trying to connect with readers who may not bring the same investments that you do, or you're trying to connect with people who may not, be naturally drawn to this subject matter. How do we make it appeal to them? So building that empathy and building that sort of self-awareness of the way that I interact with the written word is not the way that everyone interacts with the written word, right?
And I think we tend to think that connection is easier now than it used to be 20 or 30 years ago because social media, the world is such a strongly connected place, but thinking about how you navigate those connections really critically and is really important. So that kind of, as well as the literacy skills, the critical literacy skills, the empathy literacy skills, the social literacy, is really important. So I think about myself as a literacy teacher, but it's like big L literacy. There's lots of literacy.
One thing I'd love to hear from you, because I love hearing these stories from other teachers or lecturers, is about a favorite teaching moment while here at Curtin University. What's something that got you really excited or made you feel like, it's happening, I'm doing it.
I mean, there's always those moments where you'll see a student go, oh, I got that. But some of my favorite teaching moments have been, I teach this unit that I really love called Creative Literacies. We do lots of really kind of hands-on practical activities around how you can make teaching literacy really interesting and engaging. So we've done things like we had a poetry party one week earlier this year when we were looking at the concept of poetry. We have an Order of Australia medal winning children's author who works on campus.
Sure,
Sally Murphy, who is a friend of mine who I invited in, and we set up this whole poetry party with like hats and streamers and party food and played poetry games and stuff. It was the best.
That's great.
But what was really cool was one of those students in that class went off on placement, and then halfway through their placement I get this like email sent from their phone at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon or something saying, Tamara, I just have to tell you, like, that poetry activity that we did with the paddle pop sticks, we got them to write like words and phrases and things on paddle pop sticks and then pull out a handful and make a poem. She's like, I tried that with my class today and they loved it. They had so much fun. And I was like just those moments of getting to say something that we had kind of thought of and workshopped and practiced in class, that she got to do it with her lovely little Year 4 class straight away, a few weeks later, and that she was then able to see the stuff that we're doing in our classes is really connected to the skills that I want to learn. Like, those are my favourite teaching moments, where you get to see students go, Yeah,
I think students don't recognize probably don't appreciate how much their lecturers love those emails or messages that we will get occasionally, that just come in and be like, you know what, this thing that you taught me, like I put it to use right away, or I went home and I did more research about it and I'm super excited. Like those kind of messages, you're just like, yes, they're taking time out of their own schedule to share with you that it worked.
Yeah. In my secondary English unit, we're currently trialling a new assessment task, which I'm really excited about. But at the end I have them from 4 to 6 on a Thursday afternoon, which is always a really difficult time slot.
Terrible time.
So they usually kind of finish up at 5:45 and then they go home. But last week, because they're so excited about this assessment task where they have to deliver a text talk, they have to pretend they're talking to their students and telling them why we're going to start doing this book this week. They were so excited about it, but that it's 10 past 6 and I'm like, guys, it's time to go home. Just the fact that they wanted to keep those conversations going. And,
that's actually probably one of my favorite teaching experiences here at Curtin University. So the process of founding Elephant Page Publishing and getting that off the ground has been just a source of delight again and again. But probably the best part about it for me is that that's a class where the students come, and when I walk to class and I'm getting there, 15 minutes early, I'm seeing them like sitting at picnic tables outside already, like talking about class stuff with their classmates. Yeah. And then when I leave 15 minutes after the class is supposed to end, they're like still there, still talking. And I'm just like, this is amazing, right? Yeah. They're really excited about the material. They're really excited about what we're doing, but also they're making those relationships as well. And that's so important. Yeah. And so that just gives me so much joy when I see that happening.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what kind of career highlights have you had? Generally, can you tell us something about something that you're really proud of?
Yeah, sure. There's lots of different things. Definitely Elephant Page Publishing has been a career highlight, but I thought about maybe sharing something that comes from outside of the teaching space, right? So there are other things that we do beyond stuff just in the classroom. So I brought another book, one for show and tell. So this is Westerly, which you probably recognize. I am very
familiar with Westerly, yes.
So it's a literary magazine or a literary journal, and it's been published for nearly 70 years. It's, I think, the second longest running literary magazine in the country. And I'm a big fan of comics and graphic novels, and I think that's a really exciting form of publishing and of storytelling. And I realized at some point that Westerly has never published a comic in 70 years. And that seemed to me to be like a real missed opportunity, especially now where they're gaining more attention. And certainly in schools, you see them a lot more prominently integrated into the curriculum or in libraries. And so I approached Westerly and I pitched them the idea of like, we should have comics in Westerly. Westerly should be doing this. And there's a really amazing scene of comics creators in Western Australia, and we should be tapping into that. And they went for it. And so we got to do a special issue where I got to commission a dozen WA comics creators to create brand new works just for Westerly for a special issue. And then they've also started doing comics in every single issue that they publish. And so this was one that just came out, and I'm the comics editor for Westerly now.
Nice.
And it's a very small role because we're doing one comic per issue, but it's still one of those things that makes me so happy that I get to, I got to have that little bit of influence, and then it's great for the comics creators and it's great for audiences, and it's just win-win all around.
We haven't talked about comics and graphic novels before. I didn't know that was the thing. I love comics.
Oh, really?
That's really cool.
No, I didn't. Cool. Yeah, I love them as well.
Yeah.
But for me, I don't know what your origin story with comics is. Most people, it seems, are like, I started reading comics as a kid, but I never had comics as a kid. I didn't find them until I was an adult.
I mean, I grew up in a small town in Western New South Wales. We didn't have a very big comics scene. I remember occasionally seeing some like Archie and Jughead comics.
I remember that, yeah.
But that kind of phase passed really quickly. It wasn't till I was probably in my like late 30s. Yeah. And I'd always loved Wonder Woman, the TV series growing up, and then discovered like Marvel and DC comics, and now I'm a massive graphic novel reader. Like probably I read more graphic novels than I read literary fiction at the moment, partly just because they're quicker to read and I'm full-time teaching and doing my PhD. Like time to read is a little bit limited. So yeah,
that's so funny that you came to it. That would be about the same time that I came to it as well. For me, I was living in Portland, Oregon, in the US, working at a university there, and there's a big comics publishing scene there. And so because I was teaching publishing, I wanted to connect with that scene. And so I started reading comics at that point. My son was 3, and I was like, okay, all right, we're gonna go to the comic book shop together, and this will be a thing. Nice. And it became a kind of like routine for us. So he became a big comics reader at the same time that I became a big comics reader, and I went, this is an amazing art form. This is an amazing form of storytelling. There's so many exciting things happening in that space. So one day, the dream is that Elephant Page Publishing will be able to publish a graphic novel. But it's a very complicated,
if you need like a beta
venture.
Reader or something, I'm happy to volunteer as tribute.
That sounds great. Take you up on that.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, can you share a career highlight of yours with me?
Sure. So, I mean, my career highlights are always student related, but like I've talked a lot about, the stuff I love about students. Probably some of the non-teaching ones is I used to work for the New South Wales Department of Education running the Premier's Reading Challenge, and we did some work with Sydney Writers Festival, and my first year of working there, we used to record interviews with the authors who were doing the education days for students who weren't able to make it to the Writers Festival themselves. So we'd record interviews for children across the state. And the first year I was the person who did the interviewing, which I hate. I hate being in front of the camera, I hate talking. But I was like, I got paid that day to talk to Sean Tan and Chris Riddell and Emily Rodder. And I'm like, I still have those videos. It's like, that was a really good day at work. Probably the other one, the most recent one that's kind of academic related is I'm a massive Taylor Swift fan, and last year, as well as getting to go and see Taylor Swift in concert, there was a Swiftposium, an interdisciplinary conference. It was the first Taylor Swift conference that's happened, and I just kind of was like, I had a free afternoon. It's like, well, I'm going to submit an abstract and it probably won't get accepted, but then I can say I submitted an abstract to a Taylor Swift conference. But I ended up like going to Melbourne to present on some of my favourite things, like how do we engage students in texts that are meaningful to them. I got to talk about Taylor Swift. I got to hang out with a bunch of really cool academics, and yeah, that was kind of a big, like it was my first presentation, like my first conference as an academic, and it was a pretty, like it was a high bar.
That's a fun way to go in.
So yeah, that was pretty exciting.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you were talking about like how the teachers could use Taylor Swift lyrics as a way of teaching some of the skills that
lyrics as poetry specifically, because oftentimes teachers will use song lyrics as a hook. They go, we're going to do a poetry study. Here's this cool song. This is poetry. Now let's have a look at some real poets. But actually kind of looking at the lyricism in Taylor Swift, and then by extension looking at how you can engage with other other songwriters and other musicians, people like Kendrick, who has literally won, awards for his lyrics as poetry, and being able to connect students with story through the kind of stuff they listen to every day. I call it a Spotify wrapped approach to teaching poetry. It's becoming a thing. Yeah.
That's so cool. And I mean, what a great way to connect with students, because of course those teenage years are years for a lot of people where it's like music is such a big part of their life, right?
Yeah.
Their identity is wrapped up in it, so much of their social experience is wrapped up in it.
Yeah.
So what a lovely way to tap in.
Not even just for teenagers. Like, I've never been so popular with my university students as in the few weeks after I came back from the Swiftposium, and I was like, oh, sorry I wasn't here last week. I was speaking at a Taylor Swift conference. I just got mobbed. It was like my own little celebrity moment.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
And you're like, it was an academic conference.
It was an academic
She wasn't
conference.
there.
No, she wasn't there. She was in Melbourne at the time. We were kind of hoping she would drop in.
That would have been amazing.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Do you have any tips that you give your students about how to succeed in their university studies?
I do, yeah. But I probably share the tips even more often when I'll get asked to do like an orientation event, right? So like that incoming cohort of students, and I'll really, plead with them. These are the things. Pay attention to these. And I don't know if anyone listens or not, but I try. I know that they're big asks, but the first tip is always that you really need to put yourself out there, especially with your peers, but also with your lecturers or tutors as well. And that's hard, and that goes back to a conversation that we were having earlier about risky things. It feels very risky. It feels like, for the student, it feels like they're exposing themselves. But it's such an important part of the university experience, is you connecting with people and forming those relationships early that give you a reason to show up to campus, that give you a reason to continue with your studies, that give you, that fill your cup in ways that, just the study alone may not fill your cup.
Yeah.
And so, that's such an important thing. And I oftentimes see students starting to form those relationships in a really meaningful way towards the end of their degree. And so it's about trying to fast track it as much as possible, right?
Yeah.
So
I say the same thing when I do orientation stuff, like find who are the people, where are the places that you're going to get the support that you need, and to kind of know where you can get that support early. And because I'm teaching teachers, I kind of contextualize it in terms of thinking about them knowing who they are as a learner and what they need, like getting to know what kind of support you need, whether that's telling your tutor, can you please give me some kind of early reminders when tasks are happening, or, like that they need to take ownership of what it is that they need as a student. Because if they've come straight from high school, university is very different.
Yeah.
Like we expect a lot of them just in terms of being able to manage their own time and study. And for some students that can be a real hard ask. But knowing that we have a lot of support here, mostly just people who are willing to help, but are not mind readers. So, like taking a little bit of initiative to build that up. And as someone who's introverted, like I don't like talking to strangers, I understand why that can be really hard for them. But ultimately it does make their whole experience easier. The amount of times I've spoken to students who they're at the end and they go, I wish that I had done this earlier. Yeah,
and it's all those little things like joining a student club, and staying after a class to talk to your tutor one day, even if you don't necessarily have a question, just to like talk through some things with them, so that you feel like when you do have a real question or a real issue, you feel more comfortable approaching them.
Yeah. And for our online students, like I try and emphasize because distance education, online learning can be a bit more isolating.
Yep.
You're not actually getting those incidental conversations in the 5 minutes before class starts or as you're walking out of the room. So taking the time to turn your microphone on and say hi, or, contribute in the chat, those kinds of things. because I remember what it was like to be a student who was just like, I'm going to turn up and do the stuff that I have to do and figure out what I need for the assessments and then leave. But I also felt really isolated during those times. And I look back to my first postgrad degree where I was studying distance, and I was like, I wish that I had done that stuff. Like, I would have felt a lot better about the experience. Like, whether that helped me as a student or not, I don't know whether it would have made a difference to my assessments, but it would have made a difference to my kind of quality of life, how I felt about myself at the time.
I think sometimes students will try and all people will try and convince themselves that, like, oh, it's fine, I'm fine, I don't need this, I don't need that support, I don't need that connection, etc. But I would say about your experience of studying, if your experience of doing uni feels like a job that you're clocking in and clocking out of, and one that you resent going to, that's not the right way to be approaching this, right? It needs to feel more gratifying than that. You need to feel more connected than that. Or you need to, so you need to figure out how you can get those kind of supports. And starting by talking to other people is a really important part of that process. Yeah. Do you have other tips that you give orientation students or new students?
Get to know where the good coffee place is. Like, it's those things, right? Like, figure out what it is that's important to you in the experience. For me, somewhere to sit with my thoughts and a coffee and a book is important. So whenever I go somewhere new for something, like, they're the things that I seek out. Like, so find out what is important for you. And it might not be, the best coffee is made by the guy up at the library cafe, but the one that I come to most recently is Malacup because it's close to my building. That might not be important to other people. So figure out what's important to you and make sure that you know where those things are.
And just by spending time in those places, by doing things like what you're talking about, like going and getting a coffee and spending time, like, just spending time, if you are an on-campus student, spending time on campus, lots of things can come from that might be unexpected. You will bump into your fellow students, you will bump into your tutors and your lecturers. Like, when I see my students on campus, I will have a chat with them. And making yourself open to those opportunities is really valuable.
Do you have favorite spaces on campus that you like to go?
That I like to. So I will typically go to Concept for my coffee, and bring a laptop or bring a book and do some work there. It's in part though because Malacup is too close to my office, and I see too many people.
I don't go into Malacup,
so I need a little bit more
meeting because everyone is there.
I need a little bit more space.
Malacup is my go-to if I'm happy for a chat, but if I need somewhere to just kind of sit with my thoughts, I go over to the yarning circle. Slightly weather dependent, not when it's 42 degrees or raining, but for most of the year, it's a really nice spot.
All right, so if I was a student, why should I study an education degree?
Big picture, I guess, because you want to change the world, right? Like, teachers are responsible for every other profession. Like, education is so important, it's so critical, and I genuinely believe that no discredit to all of the other jobs, but but the one that we do as teachers is so important. Like, it really it empowers people. Education empowers people to do whatever it is that they want to do with their life. And so if you are the kind of person who wants to really make a difference in the life of someone, the life of a great many people, depending on how long you're teaching, but you also really need to care about young people. I got into high school teaching because I love teenagers. Like, I love that kind of interaction with teenagers who have their own kind of really strongly developing opinions and ideas about the world. They're not afraid to argue with you. Like, I get so much joy out of that. If you're the kind of person who's like, is not scared of children, and you care about your subject area, you care about wanting to make a difference in the lives of people, teaching is the job for you.
And is there a reason why? Obviously, I agree with that.
Yes.
Convinced, sold. is there a reason why you would sell someone on Curtin University specifically to study education?
Oh, that's a good question. I never try and put Curtin above other universities because
it's a tricky one, right? Because we all support each other. We have friends at the other universities.
And they're like they really care about their. And I've not worked at another university in Western Australia. Mm-hmm. All of my other degrees that I did were in New South Wales. But what I can speak to is the awesome people that I get to work with here at Curtin. You know, we have staff who really love their subject area. They really love teaching as a career, and they really want to support their students to be the best teachers that they can be. I work with so many people who are just really passionate about what they do, and so I would have no hesitation. Like if it was a family friend or a relative of mine who was like, do you think that Curtin would be a good place for me to come? Absolutely. Because I know who's going to be teaching them and they're going to have the best time in the classes.
Isn't that a lovely feeling to be like, I work at a place that I believe in what we do and I think we do it well?
I do have a relative who's, she's in her last year of high school and she's thinking about being a teacher and she lives in Sydney, but I'm like, we have a spare room, you can come over here, because I know the kind of experience she would get. And I know just how much the staff here really care about their students. So,
Her parents hate you. They're like, no, all the way to Western Australia. That's so funny. I think that question of why your degree at Curtin specifically is a really tricky one, but I was curious to hear why you would say that. Definitely agree, with the staff across the university in general, but education staff, there are so many lovely, passionate, super smart people working in that field. So I guess same question to you then. If I was a student, why should I study your course? I do like the idea of publishing. Not that I'm starting a career now. No. I feel like I could actually convince you. Like you might be someone who would be a convert. So I think that you said it's for people who want to change the world to study education. I think that's an incredibly powerful reason. I don't think I have quite the same sort of powerful grab, but for those people who love writing and are passionate about words in some way, studying the professional writing and publishing major at Curtin University is a way to turn that into a career. Those opportunities, those career opportunities that come with that, I think are really much broader than most people realize. So one of the things that I love doing in our major is we have a third year work placement unit where our students go out into the community and they do these really substantial work placement experiences, and we match them up with organizations, businesses that align with their interests, with their passions. And I always tell students, writing is it's something that every single business or organization needs. They need people with writing and editing and publishing skills. But what other passions, interests do you have? And for some of them, it's I'm really passionate about books. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll find you a work placement at a publishing house or at a writer's center, right? But for other, they bring other unexpected passions. And so they'll bring a passion for dance or the performing arts, or they'll bring a passion for, we have students who are studying, biology as well as professional writing and publishing. And so we can put them into work placements in a conservation organization or at the Perth Zoo or at the RSPCA, or we put, one of my favorite experiences was a student who was passionate about dance and writing, and she was like, is this a thing? And I was like, I don't know, we're gonna figure that out. And we approached the WA Ballet and got her a placement there, which then became a job. That was her job after she graduated, was writing their programs, doing their website copywriting, media releases, all of that. So every organization needs someone who writes. And so we can take whatever, if a person is passionate about writing, we can take whatever other passions and interests and hobbies they have, and we can combine those two things. And I think that's super gratifying for a lot of people who might have otherwise said, oh, I like writing, but can't make a job
I need a
out of
real
that.
job.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. So it's a really lovely moment for them to be able to say, no, we can. It's a thing, and we can help you get there.
Okay, so go. So because we're both book people, we ask the really difficult question: do you have a favorite book, favorite author?
Ooh, I mean, I can come up with one. It will change over time, but yes,
What is your instant response now?
All right. Okay. Well, you have to give yours as well.
Okay, cool.
So we're going to do it on a count of 3, 1, 2, 3, and then say
Okay, cool.
It's going to be a book, not
A
just an
single
author.
book?
A single book.
Okay.
It can be part of
Can
a
I have
series.
a series?
Yeah,
Okay,
you can have a series.
cool.
That's okay.
I mean,
I'll
like,
take
I'm
that.
going to cheat. Just, okay.
All right. Okay. So 1, 2, 3.
Terry Pratchett's
Benang.
Discworld series.
Oh. All right. Mine's Benang by Kim Scott.
We get to work in a
Terry-
place where
Terry
Kim
Pratchett.
Scott works.
I
Like,
know.
that's so
I know.
cool.
Yeah. Kim Scott is.
Yeah.
Works here at Curtin but it's an incredible book.
Yeah.
But Terry Pratchett, Discworld. I mean, that's
And I
heck of a choice.
I do have a couple of favorite books in the series. So Mort is the one that I get people to start at.
Okay.
I don't tell people to start at the beginning of the series. I tell them to start at Mort. But also I love the Tiffany Aching books. So the ones about the witches, they are my favorites.
Sure. Benang by Kim Scott it's an incredible book for so many different reasons. It was incredibly transformative in sort of the Australian literary scene. I don't think that like Australian literature is the same since that book was published, but it was also really transformative for me when I read it. He just does things in that book that I didn't know you could do as a writer. And I went, oh, wow, that's a fit. It works, right? If it works, then why not? So he kind of breaks rules in a way that's really, really powerful and tells these Aboriginal Australian, gives this Aboriginal Australian story that hadn't been seen in that way before.
It's my favorite of his books.
Yeah,
It is so extraordinary. Yeah. Well, thank you. This has been such a great chat. So I really enjoyed getting to sit down and talk about what we did together today.
Yeah, I know it has been. And I suspect that we might continue this over a coffee on another day.
Yes.
When we're not on TV.
Absolutely.
Being filmed.
Yes, and we have lots of graphic novel and comic conversations. I think we need to continue.
exactly.
Cool.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Wow.